India as a cultural superpower, that's our next topic of discussion. It will be moderated by Apra Kuchal of the Prabha Khaitan Foundation. And this session is with none other than Ashwin Sanghi, author. I request Mr. Sanghi to please take his seat on the stage, and also Mr. Abhay Kumar, who's a poet, joining us for the next session. Apraji, if we can just have you on the stage to take the next session forward. Let's give another round of applause. These are special Kalam and Write Circle sessions. These are boutique literary events, innovate, initiated, and brought to you by the Prabha Khaitan Foundation. Prabha Khaitan Foundation is dedicated to all-round development of social, cultural, welfare, and humanitarian aspects of Indian society. I will request if we have Mr. Abhay Kumar in the audience to also please take his seat on the stage so that we can take our next big idea, India as a cultural power forward, with Ashwin Sanghi and Abhay Kumar. Apra Kuchal is moderating this session. Apraji, over to you.
Thank you. Here.
Thank you.
Ashwin ji and Abhay ji.
Thank you.
All the A's on a panel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good morning. Thank you so very much. And as my dear friend just announced, this is a special session, a Kalam Write Circle session by Prabha Khaitan Foundation. And Prabha Khaitan Foundation is an innovator of boutique literary events. And we've been organizing events in almost 48 cities now. And this panel is very special because my favorite people are here, and it is AAA, triple A. Okay. So first, with your permission, I will ask you, aap kathawachak hai. You are a storyteller. How have you made it possible through your writings, whether it's mythology, whether it's history, all various subjects, how do you make sure that all this goes into one book and a global conversation starts from there?
Apra, that's a wonderful sort of start, I would imagine, to this session. I've had to do very little, because if you notice, most of my books are part of what is known as the Bharat series. And when I think of Bharat, I think of an ancient arc of influence. So, you know, when people today talk about, the topic of our session today is soft power, or a cultural soft power. But the truth is that we have always been punching above our weight in ancient times. So let's think of, for example, what we call Iran today. That word comes from Aryanem Vaija, which is the land of the Aryans. Or if you go back to today's Syria and Turkey, 3,400 years ago, you see a treaty being executed by the Hittites and the Mitanni, where they invoke Lord Indra and Varuna and Mitra. Look at, come eastwards towards China, and you see that it was two Buddhist monks who carried the Buddhist scriptures to China, or Bodhidharma, who took martial arts to China. Go further southeast, and you see the largest Vishnu temple in the world is in Cambodia. The fact that even till today, the kings of the Chakri dynasty of Thailand still assume the title of Lord Rama. If we go into Japan, Zen Buddhism, where does it come from? Dhyan. So the reality of our world is that the arc of influence of Bharat has always been there. It is in some ways a post-1947 phenomenon that we start thinking of Bharat as a landmass. And we do ourselves a great disservice by thinking along those lines. If we talk about the great epics, the greatest of them probably the Ramayana, we have 300 versions of the Ramayana. Of course, I mean, and each version actually has substantive differences.
Yes.
So, Valmiki Ramayana, Ram is Maryada Purushottam. But by the time you come to Tulsi Ramayana, he's become Avatar of Vishnu, the greatest divine character that there could possibly be. If you look at, let's say, the Adbhut Ramayana, then in the Adbhut Ramayana, it is Sita who manifests as Durga in order to slay Ravan. Or in the Anand Ramayana, the abduction is not of Sita but of Kaushalya. Go down south to Malabar, the Mappila Ramayana, Ram is a sultan. The Buddhist Ramayana, Ram is a bodhisattva. Yes. The Jain Ramayana, Lakshman is the one who kills Ravan. The point I'm making is, it's very easy to call it mythology and to say there were 300 versions, so it's all obviously a bunch of lies. Mm-hmm. But I ask you this question. Would 300 versions have been written about someone called Ram if he did not exist? And that is what I believe we should be doing, and we should be asking ourselves.
I think that is a superb question, and we've never kind of realized this, but yes, I totally agree with you. Over to you, Abhay. As a diplomat and poet, your work bridges the worlds of culture and diplomacy. How do you see the cultural diplomacy, and as Ashwin really cited out very, very nicely, that that arc of influence always existed, and why do we see Bharat as only a landmass? So I'd like to ask you, that is the Indian cultural diplomacy contributing to India's aspiration of becoming a global cultural superpower?
The simple answer is yes. And then, just to add to it, as India these days has assumed the presidency of G20, for the first time in my whole career, I have seen a diverse set of Indian cultural events being organized across the country to showcase the best of Indian culture to the people, to the leaders of 20 most powerful countries on the planet. And this whole year, from November to November, I mean last year to this year, so far I have personally, as the head of cultural events for G20, coordinated over 300 cultural programs in each and every state and union territory of India, involving over 17,000 artists.
Wow.
And personally myself, I mean, I have never seen this diversity of Indian art and culture. I assure you that even Indians, they do not know much about India. We have, when we join the service, we have something called Bharat Darshan. But G20 has been the biggest Bharat Darshan for myself, and I think for all of us, the whole team. Most of us know about the classical forms of dances, 6 classical dances. But India's folk dance and music tradition is just unparalleled. I have served in many countries, but I have never seen such diversity of art and culture anywhere on the planet. Probably, I think Africa is the only continent which can outnumber us. But India is a cultural powerhouse. No doubt about that. But I'll come to but, I mean, there's a civilizational India, what Ashwin is talking about. And there is a young nation we have. And the challenges we have. What are the challenges in cultural diplomacy? What we are great at and what we should do more which are the areas where we need to do more work, I'll expand in the next question.
Coming over to you, I'd like to know that how crucial is social inclusivity, and that is what it is very important for India to be there, as he spoke about G20 and so many other things. Of course, being an Indian so many times, you're at loss of words because you really do not know. So how has the social inclusivity been portrayed in your books, through your writings?
Apra, I think it is an immense sense of pride that all of us in this great land belong to an ancient tradition called Sanatan Dharma. And the way I see it is that Sanatan Dharma is a no formula faith. It is one of those where there is no single church, pope, holy book that needs to be followed. The concept of blasphemy does not exist. You can have 33 kotis of deities with millions of manifestations, and yet you believe that, listen, at the end of the day, they lead to an eternal greater power or truth. You can be an astic, a nastic, a tantric. You could believe in bhakti, or you could believe in shakti. I could look at a shivling and say that it is a shivling, and you could look at it and say that it is a stone. But both of us will still be welcome. In that sense, I truly believe that Sanatan Dharma, in some ways, was a precursor to this unfortunate word that we have incorporated, called secularism. And which is what I find so strange, because in the original preamble to the Constitution, the writers of our Constitution did not find it necessary to incorporate the word secular, because it was taken for granted that this is a land which has always practiced pluralism. So therefore, they did not feel the necessity to insert it. And then the question you have to ask yourself is that from 1947 to 1975, 1975 is when you had the insertion of the two words socialist and secular into the preamble. But you had your constitution existing from 1949 onwards. The question you have to ask yourself is that, did India become a Hindu Rashtra during those years when the word secularism was not there? So the answer is obviously a resounding no. So the effort of my books, or the effort that I make through my books, is to talk about that intrinsic plurality, which is already there. We do not need an artificial construct to explain pluralism to us.
True. Absolutely. Over to you, Abhay. I'd like to ask, you've written the Earth Song, and then you translated it into so many languages. What was the motive behind that? And do you think that with this, did you start a new kind of a conversation, that could lead to India becoming the cultural superpower?
Well, the logo, the motto of G20 is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And one family, one earth, one family, one future. You see, this kind of idea where you consider the whole world, or not world actually, but the whole earth, Vasudha. Vasudha is earth. And that includes not only people, but also it includes all the species who inhabit this planet with us. So this kind of thought is unique to Indian civilization. I have not come across this kind of liberal and generous thought anywhere else. And this has been put to practice now. When our parliament was constructed, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam was inscribed in the central hall of the building. You can still go and see it. And when I was India's ambassador to Madagascar, I got it inscribed also in the building of the embassy. Ayam nizah paroveti ganana laghu chetsa udar charitranam vasudhaiva kutumbakam. That this is mine and that is yours. That's how the narrow-minded people think. For the open-minded, for the generous-hearted, the whole world is a family. And this thought, as Ashwin is saying, it's a unique contribution to India's civilization. And we have, through G20, we have put this idea, this philosophy in front. It's no more just being quoted by one prime minister or the another external affairs minister, but it has become something which we truly believe in. And I'll give you one example of it. When COVID-19 pandemic happened, India's vaccine Matri was a practical example of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, where India supplied vaccines to more than 100 countries. International peacekeeping force in the United Nations, India has been traditionally the largest contributor. A practical side of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. I wrote an earth anthem inspired by Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Because even a university or a cricket team has, football team has an anthem. But what about our planet? We don't have a common anthem. And I thought that we must have a common anthem. Because even if we say Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, we need the common symbols, we need something common to unite us. An earth anthem has been translated into over 150 languages. That shows that there's a quest to have a common song, a common anthem which everybody can sing, whether from India or from anywhere else. So something which puts in perspective India's unique contribution or unique philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam and making it practical and something doable, singing a common anthem.
Talking about common and things that are very common to keep India together, I'd like to ask that, the global appeal of your novels showcases India's storytelling tradition. How are you leveraging it and this narrative of entire storytelling practice, how has it unified India?
Well, we've always been a land of storytellers. Even when we didn't know how to write, we were still telling stories. And I think where we as a nation, if we are looking at in the long run, I think it was Harvard professor Joseph Nye who coined the term soft power. And what he talked about were two very different ideas, that there is hard power, which is really about coercion. And then there is soft power, which is actually about persuasion. Yeah. And it has always been said that the shortest distance between two people is a story, right? So if we are really wanting to leverage and play up on this soft power game, then our storytelling will have to, in some ways, be the cheerleader of sorts. If one is looking at the hard power bit, then what are we talking about? Money and military. But if we are talking soft power, then it's probably motivation. how do you stir optimism and hope? Now, I'm enough of a realist to know that in some ways, soft power becomes far easier to sell when you also have hard power. And in that sense, if you follow the rankings very closely in the brand finance global rankings, you will find that typically within the top 10 or 15 soft power nations, typically there are many of those who also have a lot of their fair share of hard power. So in that sense, I believe that what we need to do is work on two separate angles. On one hand, in one direction is our Shastra, our wisdom, our knowledge, our ability to be able to spin that story, to be able to tell our side of the story. So that part of it is what I consider to be the Shastras. And on the other hand, we need to also work on Shastra. How do we make sure that we are also equally powerful in more material and military terms? I think the two have to go hand in hand. But I'm doing my own small bit in terms of trying to present many of those ideas from ancient Bharat in order to be able to bring out the notion that don't think of India as something that took birth in 1947. Because to my mind, the very notion is something that goes back several thousands of years. And we need to be leveraging those ideas, those sentiments, those emotions, not only internally within India, but also outside of India.
Totally. So winding up quickly, I'd like to ask you, Abhay, thoda hai, thode ki zarurat hai.
So I just wanted to add to what Ashwin has said. What I propose is an Indian translation agency, because we have not done much work in promoting our ancient literature. Most of Indian literature, whether in Sanskrit or in India's regional languages, remain untranslated into at least 6 UN languages. So what we need to do is, point one, is to create an Indian translation agency, have a list of books which have been already translated, and a list which could be possibly translated in next 2-3 years. Identify a list of translators from across the world, actually, those who are interested passionately in translating Indian literature, Indians as well. So that we have more of katha, more of Indian stories being read, being known beyond what has been India's traditional influence, which is Southeast Asia and a bit of the civilizational India. But the world is much larger today. We have whole Latin America, we have Africa, we have Europe, America. So we need to do more. And this is what, my 3-point suggestion is.
Just in 2 lines, thoda hai, thode ki zarurat hai. How do you see this line?
I'm not in agreement with the line, because thoda nahi hai, bahut kuch zyada hai. There is lots. We've not even scratched the surface of Bharat. And that's what I say, that this is if I look at India as a treasure house, Bharat as a treasure house, it is a treasure house of stories. And we have, unfortunately, our kids grew up reading Alice in Wonderland. But at the end of the day, the rich tradition of the Panchatantra is available to us, and the Panchatantra not only became a medium of instruction for the kings of this country, but eventually went to places like Iran, where it became a standard manual for teaching the bureaucracy, where it became one of the first works to be subjected to translation and printing in Europe. You have an Arabic version which talks of the 2 jackals, which comes from the Panchatantra. So those are the rich treasures of India, which somehow or the other we have learned to ignore, and we need to bring them back into our public discourse.
ये ना सोचो जंग में कर सका क्या अकेला, ये ना सोचो जंग में कर सका क्या अकेला, लाखों में काम करता है चंद्रमा अकेला. चंद्रमा पे भी पहुंच गए हम. Thank you so
बिल्कुल,
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. A big round of applause for this invigorating conversation. I would request everyone to be on stage. I'll take the pleasure of inviting our Vice President, Marketing, Pooja Sharma Gupta, onto the stage to present mementos to all our panelists. Big round of applause, please. Thank you very much. Keep the applause coming. This is what makes